Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Carey. I work here sporadically. We'll welcome Dr. Lee out in just a minute, but first, given that we are live streaming this to our alums on WeChat and other places around the world, we do have some special viewers. Don and Heidi Schultz are home watching this. Don's on the comeback. We hope he's feeling better. But can we just take a minute and give Don a quick hand to tell him that we're thinking of him. Thank you. So this morning, Frank is about to introduce Dr. Lee. A couple things are going to happen. We're going to have Dr. Lee's presentation. That'll be followed by a Q&A. We'll have our IMC students working the mics. After that, we will have a book signing. Everyone who buys a book gets into the group photo afterwards. And the challenge is that if we outsell Columbia, Dr. Lee will put on a Northwestern hat for the group photo. So I challenge you all. $23, it's a steal. Okay, so with that, please, Frank Mulhern.
Thank you, Jim. My name is Frank Mulhern. I'm Associate Dean for Research at Medill. I want to begin by thanking our alumnus, Anita Huang, class of IMC class of 1999. She is now Chief Marketing Officer at Sinovation in Beijing, China. And she has helped arrange, along with Jim, to have Dr. Kai-Fu Lee appear to speak to us today. Dr. Lee is a world-renowned expert in artificial intelligence and venture capital. He is the chairman and CEO of Sinovation Ventures and president of Sinovation Ventures Artificial Intelligence Institute. Sinovation manages over $2 billion and invests largely in Chinese tech companies, including Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, Lenovo, and many, many others. He is very well known and followed around the world. In fact, on social media, he has 50 million followers. That is million with an M. He's been widely reported in the news media for his expertise in both artificial intelligence and the future of everything, including the future of work, which he will talk about at some length today. And he's the author of the just released book, AI Superpowers, China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order. And you'll notice he put the word China before Silicon Valley, and he's going to explain what that means. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kai-Fu Lee.
Thank you very much. For those of you who are a little colorblind, this is purple. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna, rather than me telling you about AI, I'm gonna bring out the true expert to give you a short introduction of AI. Here he goes.
It's a great thing to build a better world with artificial intelligence.
Wait a sec.
人工智能正在改变世界.
So you probably didn't know that President Trump spoke Chinese so fluently. Of course, he didn't. That was created by machine learning, deep learning, and actually by a Chinese company. So in one demo, hopefully I've shown you that Chinese companies are really moving forward with machine learning, and the capabilities are very, very strong. For those of you not familiar with deep learning, it is basically a technology for within one single domain with a massive amount of training data that it can learn to do better than human job in classification, prediction, or decision making. And we see it every day on the internet, but it's actually applied to many, many domains. So AI is really going to change the world, and these are the 4 waves that I'm predicting that will happen over the next 15 years. The first wave is, of course, the internet AI wave. As I said, it's a single narrow domain, huge amount of data, and there's no better example than internet applications. When you use Amazon, Google, Facebook, you are contributing data to it, and you're labeling the data for them. Every time you purchase on Amazon, you're giving them a signal that someone like you would like to buy this item. And when you browse but don't buy, you're sending a different signal. And if you're on Facebook and you click on something in your newsfeed or don't click, similarly, you're sending a message so that they can learn from the large amounts of data. So it's no surprise that the 7 giants in AI today in the world, 4 American, 3 Chinese, all worth $500 billion or higher, have really leveraged AI to help them monetize and create products that users like. AI works by giving it an objective function, and that function can be maximize my revenue, maximize the minutes of the user on this web page, or minimize the default rate of my loan. So the ability for a human to set a single mathematical function for a large amount of data to get optimized is a phenomenal capability. And that's why AI is going to be applied to many, many domains. After the internet, business AI will be next to banks, insurance companies, universities, hospitals, medical research, and so on and so forth. Whoever has a lot of data, they can also do this. You don't have to be an internet company. So a bank can suddenly take what they used to consider a cost function, the data storage, and turn it into a gold mine by taking all customer transactions over the history of the customer's usage with the bank. It can estimate the customer's true net worth, therefore what kinds of products to target and try to sell to the customer, and also whether a use of the credit card might be fraudulent, and whether to give a loan to the customer, and how to do asset allocation, and so on and so forth. So existing businesses can take the data that they have stored and use AI fitting into their business process to create revenue and profit. And that's the second wave of AI. There are many examples here, some of which are our investments. Fourth paradigm is our investment in AI for banking. AI innovation is our investment that's creating AI for retail and manufacturing and insurance. eBot is our investment that is building a customer service rep to enhance and later displace the customer service representative, first by text and later by speech. So we, as investment companies, would not invest in a technology when it's fledgling and uncertain. You can be sure when we make an investment, we see that it's going to generate positive returns, that the technology is ready for application. Then there will be the third wave. The third wave will really be digitizing the physical world. Unlike the first 2 waves, which use big data, the third wave will have eyes and ears that watch and listen. And data that used to be transient, things that we hear, things that we see, they just disappear. But in the third wave, they will be captured and new capabilities will be created. So an example is when you go through immigration, now it's a lot of countries are using face recognition. But that's still old technology where you stand there, you just hold your face and let it take a picture of your face. A much more advanced version now is in China. So as you walk around, you don't have to stop anywhere. It uses continuous video capture to take many pictures of your face to ensure you are who you say you are. So when Anita and I go to work, we don't have a badge. Our face opens all the doors we're supposed to open. So that's face recognition. But that's just one simple example. There are many ways, many other applications. We all know that Amazon Echo, you can do speech with that. And all of your speech is captured initially for commands, but it's also used to better understand you because it's heard what music you requested, what items you bought, what your spouse might be saying in the background. All of that is captured for future intelligence in whatever application they choose. Amazon Go is an example of an autonomous store. That's like going all the way to L4, L5 autonomous driving, for those of you who are familiar with the grades of autonomous driving. L1 is basically human driving with some warning signs. L2 is it can come in and help to avoid accidents. L3 is it can take over to drive on highways and park the car. L4 becomes basically it drives itself, and the human would only need to come in certain emergencies. And similarly, autonomous stores. Actually, autonomous vehicle is wave 4, so I'll talk more about that in a moment. But autonomous stores can also have L1, 2, 3, 4. So L1 might be it watches what you do in the store. Just like when you go to Amazon, Amazon knows who looked at what and bought what. But in a store, in the US, if you have a little store, at the end of the day, you have a pile of cash and you sold some inventory and you go count them. But you really don't know who bought what. And you can't predict how much something will sell tomorrow because you don't have an insightful view on each user, what they want, what they buy on what day of the week. But if you had cameras and sensors in your store, you're watching everyone with their action, and that can be used just like web browsing and cookies to infer user intention based on watching them. That's kind of L1. And then moving forward, you can have people put things in a basket or a tray and then check out with them. And then after that, you could just have people put whatever they want in their pocket, and then they're directly charged. And that's kind of the model of Amazon Go. They took an expensive approach. We have investments in several companies, including Yonghui, a supermarket in China. We're trying to enable them to do this kind of L1, L2, L3 levels of autonomous stores. And also, if you have autonomous store, of course, you will have autonomous fast food, right? So there's no need to have humans prepare food in McDonald's. You can have machines that can do that. You can have machines that will wash dishes. You can have machines and AI that will be the cashier. So by the time all that's done, basically all fast food will become AI-enabled. And that's it's already happening. The feasibility is done. Just a matter of how long it takes for entrepreneurs to open up those stores and basically squeeze the existing fast food chains. And F5 is our investment in that area. Face++ is our computer vision company. And then, of course, wave 4 is when robotics and autonomous driving enables AI with the ability to move arms and legs and able to move around and manipulate. So that will begin with factories, basically doing what's done in an assembly line and going on to autonomous security, to examples I gave for a dishwasher. Do you all want a robotic dishwasher? We invested in one. So the way it works is you take the tablecloth and dump everything in, like in the restaurant or your home, and it all comes out clean with all the things being recycled. Now you all want one, right? So when I sign your book, if you would write a check to me for $300,000, I'll make sure your order is placed. But that is the way robotics will work. It will target very large and high-end restaurants that may have 5 or 6 dishwashers. And $300,000 is basically it pays for itself in a year compared to the cost paid to dishwashers. Right? Dishwashing is one of those tasks that are stationary and very repetitive and routine and very able to be replaced by AI. And over time, it will get cheaper as the technologies improve and the parts are made in volume. So eventually you can buy one for the students when you get married, maybe in 5 or 10 years, you can buy one for maybe $1,000 or $2,000. But initially it starts high-end. And that's the way robotics will move forward. Autonomous vehicles is just around the corner. In Phoenix, Waymo is being trialed. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it will really change the way our transportation works. We'll no longer want to buy cars because that's not a good investment anymore. It was never a good investment. And we'll be able to go wherever we want with Uber that arrives in 30 seconds. They're all strategically, without drivers, looking for where they should be. aware of when, Northwestern students might need a bunch of cars to go to Chicago and so on. They're intelligent to place their swarms of cars in the right places so that it's just in time there for you. And there won't need to be any more parking. There will be less pollution, greater money saved, efficiency gained, and also safety. AI gets better with more and more training data. So the first day that autonomous vehicle launches, Waymo launches in Phoenix, it might just be a little better than the human driver. But over time, it will get a lot better than human driver. Eventually, we won't be allowed to drive anymore. And that's the progression of AI improving over time. So if you enjoy driving, go drive a lot now. In 15 years, you won't be allowed to drive on the public roads anymore. However, just like people who like to ride horses, they can still go to farms to ride horses. So there will still be car farms where you can go drive, but not in public roads, because we will, by that time, become the greatest danger to our safety because cars drive so well. So a lot more details I could give, a lot of details in the books, but basically 4 waves, each creating increasing impact to the society on the order of 5 to 10% of our GDP. So that's where the future is going. And AI isn't perfect. AI only works in the following scenarios: a huge amount of data, a single domain, and pretty well labeled, and a lot of computer power. And then for the advanced tasks like autonomous vehicle and robotics, you really still need super experts. But for early types of usage, for example, in your day-to-day work, looking at analytics and how to use it to make predictions, the toolkits are pretty much good enough that if you took 1 or 2 courses in AI, either in the school or even in Coursera or Udacity, you would be able to use AI. The tools are getting good enough. And that's one of the big reasons why AI will take off, is that it no longer requires a super Turing Award recipient supervising a student who's written a lot of papers. So next, I want to talk about US and China. You would think US would be by far the leader in AI. And certainly, these are the giants of AI, the Turing Award recipients, the deep learning experts. US is, of course, by far ahead of China in deep research expertise. If you measure by the top 10 people, China has 0. US and Canada have 10. If you measure by the top 100 people, US probably has 70. China probably has 2. If you measure by the top 1,000 people, US probably has about 650. China probably has about 65. So it's still a 10-to-1 ratio. The expertise in the US is just so much deeper than China. You might ask, what if we measure the top 1,000,000? Well, then probably 500,000 are from China. So China is rising in this pyramid because China was behind in AI, and really a large number of young people are coming in. So is that going to do any good? Well, I think China has a number of advantages which will give it a chance to really challenge the US as an AI superpower. So that's what my book is about. So I'll quickly go over the six reasons why China might have a chance. The first reason is that China has basically started to innovate in products. Because China's market is so big and so much VC money went into China, the top quartile VC return in China is substantially higher than the top quartile Silicon Valley VC return. So it returns well, so a lot of money goes in. The money is used to train great entrepreneurs who build great companies, who have great products that further makes the market bigger. So this virtuous loop has continued for the last 15 years as China went from 100 million users to 800 million users, as China's total market cap of internet companies went from 1/20th of US now to 1-to-1 of US. So even pre-AI days, Chinese product-making capabilities have caught up. So much so that China is really no longer a copycat. The universe has been split in 2. There are 2 models to make great companies. The American model is embodied by Steve Jobs. and visionary, technology-driven, lightweight. The Chinese model is embodied by the companies many of you know, Alibaba, Tencent, Meituan, Didi. These companies have a completely different way to build a business. Because China used to be full of copycats, a Chinese company can only win if it makes a company that is uncopyable. So for those of you from Kellogg, I think this will make a lot of very interesting case studies that Silicon Valley way is not the only way. It may not even be the best way in terms of monetizing and creating value. Because in business, you really want to build not just a cool product, not just something that causes people's jaws to drop, but build a product that is uncopyable. And that's what China's early copycat behavior has caused, that the Chinese entrepreneurs have figured out how to build uncopyable business models. Give you a quick example of what's an uncopyable business model. You guys use Yelp, right? It's a great product. And those of you from China use Meituan, right? Are these two similar? Not at all. Yelp is merely a very lightweight layer that tells you what restaurants are rated. Meituan goes all the way to bringing that restaurant to home by delivering its food to you. And you can say, well, that's just Grubhub. We have that too. But actually, you don't. When you go home, can you cover 80% of America, and anytime you go home, have several hundred restaurants that you can choose from that delivers to you within 30 minutes from the time you order, including the cooking time, for 70 cents per delivery. So if you have that, then I say you have Meituan. So how do you ever do that? Well, it's a long story in my book, but in short, you have to not only develop AI algorithms, gather a lot of data, take a lot of chances, but you have to build a fleet of 600,000 people who are paid at sub-minimum wage and rewarded by reverse surge pricing. So all these tricks to get these people come in, trained, learn to be courteous, deliver the food, and once they become very good, they'll probably want a better job, and they move on. Then you have to bring more of these delivery people, pay them at a very minimum, but train them. So this is a very hairy, ugly, challenging process about management of giant teams of people with tremendous turnover. Of course, there are also people who don't perform, and you have to use their 5-star rating to fire the ones who don't perform. And you have to find the cheapest way to deliver to the home, and that can't be by Uber Eats. The car and the gasoline is just too expensive. You'll never get to 70 cents. So they use electrical mopeds with batteries that can be swapped. So you can imagine the effort it takes, the capital it takes, and the risk it takes to build up this system of delivery to 70% of Chinese homes, 30 minutes from the time you order, 70 cents per order. But once you've achieved it, you build a very, very long moat, very long and deep moat that your competitor, unless they raise a couple of $1 billion and try to emulate you, even then they may not work because you've got AI and data all looping around. But imagine the risks that's taken. When they started on this task, they didn't know if 70 cents per order was achievable. Suppose they got down to $1.70 and got stuck. What would be the consequence? The consequence would be they would lose $25 million a day because they deliver 25 million orders a day. And if it costs $1.70 and they charge 70 cents, they lose 25 million a day. So I think this shows you the audacious, tenacious, risk-taking, moat-building, money-raising capability, eventually targeting, building a business model that's uncopyable. So that's what the Chinese have come up with. And this is the same with the Uber of China, with the eBay of China. They've all built their moats. And you can study that, and I think people in Kellogg go back and tell your professors, don't take any more Silicon Valley case studies. Look to China. It's harder to tell the Stanford MBAs that because they're in Silicon Valley, but you guys can be objective and see what's more worth studying. I mean, Yelp, $4 billion company, Meituan, $55 billion company. So that is the outcome and the reward when you take the corresponding risk. So as a result, the copycats are no longer. Chinese companies started being copycats. Then they started building products better than the company that originally inspired them. Or maybe they started at the same time. WhatsApp and WeChat started roughly the same time. Those of you who use both surely will tell me that you totally agree. WeChat is better than WhatsApp, right? Yes. And those of you who use Weibo and Twitter know also that Weibo is a better product than Twitter. Maybe not in the diversity of content, but definitely in the quality of product, right? And Zhihu, our investment, is better than Quora, and so on and so forth. But that's the second stage. But we're now in the third stage, and I won't have time today to tell you about the third stage. But the third stage is full of companies that don't exist in the US. See, in these cases, I can tell you, Weibo is kind of like Twitter, but better, and so on. We can tell you that Sina is kind of like Yahoo, but different in this way. But in this column, there are no correlate American companies. So this is a proof that the Chinese companies have figured out how to innovate, and now they're being copied to other countries. So why is China going to have a chance to lead in AI? Well, because of these entrepreneurial models that are iterating, because of these tenacious Chinese entrepreneurs, and because more money is flowing to China. This shows 48% of the world's VC money in AI has gone to China compared to 38% in the US in 2017. And the Chinese stock market is valuing AI companies more so than the American companies values the corresponding companies. Just Sinovation Ventures, us alone, as one VC, one of many VCs in China, we have helped create 5 unicorns. And these companies are valued at a total of 21 billion US, with 1 or 2 to be IPO soon. These are really core AI companies. These are not internet companies masquerading as AI companies. And there are at least 10 more unicorns in China that have been created over the last 2 to 4 years. These AI companies are not like Palantir, that's been around for 15 years. These just came very recently, and they're all generating revenue. Some are highly profitable. Some are getting huge traction. Others maybe have a little bubble in valuation, but in any case, 15 or so unicorns, all created. Basically, the companies were created 2 to 5 years ago, and they became unicorn all in the last 18 months. So China's AI boom really just happened after the Sputnik moment when AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol 2.5 years ago. And on why that's important, you have to read my book. Another advantage is AI. A lot of people think of AI as we're in the period of discovery and breakthrough, because you read about AI for cancer, AI beats doctors, AI beats customer service rep, AI beats chess player, Go player, AI can do this and that. But actually, underneath all that is one breakthrough. That breakthrough is deep learning and associated technologies around deep learning. So my view is that deep learning is like electricity. It was invented once and now ready to be applied 1 million times to all kinds of industries. It is not the case that more deep learnings are being invented. AI has had a history of 62 years. There has been one huge breakthrough, and that was 10 years ago. So I don't think it is very likely there would be another huge breakthrough like deep learning. There could be, but not very likely. More likely is take deep learning and how do we apply it to 1 million areas. So if there were a bunch of deep learnings coming, then it's clearly US advantage. But if it is about applying very tenaciously, finding every opportunity to make money, gather more data, well, advantage then goes to China. And I would argue we're more in the green zone now. Now, with a brilliant discovery that could happen from DeepMind next week, of course, it would switch back to advantage US. But I think we're more likely in the green zone for the time being. And if another breakthrough comes out, then it's advantage US, and I'll be writing my next book. So we talked a lot about data. The more data, the system works better. All of you have probably read some paper that shows with more data, doesn't matter what algorithm you use, it just gets better. So in AI, if data is the new oil, then China is the new Saudi Arabia. China has so much data, not only in the number of users, but also in the types of data gathered per user. These are things like, what did you order for takeout? What did you pay? And when did you borrow? When did you use a shared bike? In these data, the particularly valuable data is mobile data. Chinese mobile payment has exceeded China GDP, if you can imagine. This is, those of you in Kellogg are probably saying, Dr. Lee, you got this all wrong, it's not possible, but it is. If you think about the raw materials paid by mobile payment, wholesale paid by mobile payment, retail, channels, commission, sales, returns, all by mobile payment. So for $1 of merchandise sold, there are actually many payments throughout the chain. And also, allowances are given in mobile payment. Chinese red envelopes are given in mobile payment. Poker debts are settled by mobile payment. And farmers market by mobile payment. They don't take cash anymore. This is a fruit stand that says, this is the only way you can pay me. And if you go to a street, and occasionally, there aren't very many beggars in China, but when you see one, they're probably holding up a sign that says, I'm hungry, scam me. I'm totally serious. My wife saw one the other day because they know there's no cash. So the entire environment is now full of mobile payment driven. So imagine, if you will, Facebook bought Visa and MasterCard and integrated all the data together. That's roughly how powerful this Tencent is in China. And of course, government has been very supportive of AI, including the AI development plan. The role of the Chinese government is setting a tone, saying AI is very important, and then banks and local cities will choose to adopt AI in the way that it sees fit. As an example, China is building a new city the size of Chicago called Xiong'an, and it will have autonomous driving built in. In the downtown of that Xiong'an, size of Chicago, that downtown, imagine the downtown of Chicago would be 2 layers of roads. The top layer is pedestrians, bicycles, pets, and so on. Very green, very beautiful. And on the bottom is a B1. Think of it as a basement layer for vehicles. So that will immediately make the likelihood of a car hitting a pedestrian in downtown, the most dangerous part of autonomous driving, immediately removed. What we saw in Phoenix with Uber earlier, that possibility will be gone. So it's conceivable Xiong'an could launch an autonomous vehicle program, even though the cars may not drive as well as people yet, but close enough. When we make that separation, the accidents will go down. Another example is Zhejiang province. Autonomous vehicles are best driven on highways. So what they've done is they built a new highway that has sensors built in to talk to the cars to make sure they're safe. So those are the kind of big infrastructure spending that will accelerate the adoption of AI in China. So if we look at these 4 areas, the 4 waves I talk about, I think China is currently a little bit behind the US, and China will likely catch up and probably slightly lead the US in 5 years' time. The one area where China is not likely to lead the US is business AI, and that's because Chinese enterprises have not used data warehousing to store structured data, so that hospitals, banks, and insurance companies have a lot of homework to do before they get ready. Also, the adoption of cloud in China is behind the US. But in internet, in perception, and possibly in autonomous vehicles and robots, China could catch up. The last one is particularly interesting. That catch-up is not a technical catch-up. US is about 2.5 years ahead of China right now. But while the Chinese policies are helping to build these roads and cities to enhance autonomous vehicles, there are questions under the US administration of whether autonomous trucks are a good thing, whether they should be helped or hindered because they might impact the jobs of the truckers. So One government is pushing forward, one might be pulling it back, and that might give China the chance to catch up. Of course, the US government can become enlightened to make sure it keeps the lead, but it's not currently looking that way. So with China and US as dual engine driving AI forward, all the giants training great people, and a lot of VCs funding AI, and then platforms emerging that will help AI become more widely adopted and used by all engineers. AI is estimated to bring about $16 trillion as a net incremental GDP to humanity in 2030, by 2030. And that number is roughly the size of China's GDP plus India GDP. So essentially, AI will gift humanity the size of a GDP of China plus India, and that wealth is a wealth that we can use to eradicate poverty, eradicate hunger, or to subsidize issues that really require subsidy, which we'll get to in a minute. There are many, many problems of AI. Privacy, we've heard about that. Security is a big problem. Security with AI is a totally different issue. You can fool a face recognizer to think you are not a terrorist. If you were one, you could go in, mess with the data. You don't have to actually insert any code. You just change the data, and it's much less detectable. You could also put stickers and things on your face or on your car to fool the recognizer to think that the car is invisible or to think that you are someone else. So those are all new ways of hacking that were totally different from the way you hack a PC and a phone. And the consequences are substantial because when you hack someone's PC, the worst case is, well, you lose all your data, your PC is dead. But if you hack all the autonomous vehicles in the country, they can be turned into weapons to kill rather than save pedestrians. So these are very, very serious issues. Bias from data is another issue that's been talked a lot about. The giants are getting stronger because AI helps reinforce monopoly, because data makes their product better. Even if you have the same brand, same funding, same technology, you might not beat an incumbent because they've got the feedback loop and the data for many, many years. Wealth inequality has been increasing, top 2% versus bottom 90% of the US population, and that will get worse as more ultra-rich come from using benefits of the AI. And also the bottom 90%, especially the bottom 50% of the world in terms of income or education will be badly hurt with job displacement. If we think about what jobs would get displaced, we said AI can do one single task extremely well. So how many jobs are really doing one task? And how many jobs are doing a couple of tasks, several of which are singular and routine and replaceable? The simple question to ask is, how routine is a job? And that is how likely the job will be replaced by AI. Because AI can, within the routine task, learn to optimize itself. And the more quantitative, the more objective the job is, separating things from into bins, washing dishes, and picking fruits, and answering customer service calls, those are very much scripted tasks that are repetitive and routine in nature. And in a matter of 5 or 10 or 15 years, they will be displaced by AI. Now, there are some jobs that are safe. I think the professor's jobs are safe. My job is safe. But a lot of jobs are not. And if we actually look at the news today, this is not the future. This is happening today. This is a picture of our autonomous store, that autonomous fast food that we funded. And you can go in, scan your face, and order a bowl of beef noodles for $1.50. Would you do that? Or would you go to McDonald's to spend $5? I think over time, we'll find increasingly commoditized stores and restaurants and fast food and other places. There will not be more humans there because it is not the place in which we require human-to-human interaction or enjoy human-to-human interaction. This is another example. basically a cash register for pastries. Put a tray of pastries, it checks you out immediately. It's much better than scanning the code at Walgreens. This is much faster. You can't put code on a little, you can't put the symbols on the pastries anyway, and it recognizes all of them together. And this costs about less than $1,000. So this is displacing a cashier one by one. This is disrupting an industry. That's two ways that jobs will be displaced. Similarly, in white-collar work, Citi has announced a large-scale layoff, 10,000 people over the next 3 years, and they are operational staff who will be displaced by automation and AI. And even jobs like newspaper editors, no newspaper would ever replace its editor with a robot. But if more people read news like Toutiao, Chinese news, or Facebook newsfeed, then that's eyeballs that are not on traditional media or website media, and those jobs will be squeezed because there are fewer eyeballs on them. So again, the displacement can be one-to-one or by industry disruption. So a lot of jobs are going to be gone, and not everybody can be CEOs and scientists. What are we going to do? Well, if we think about what AI cannot do, there are actually two dimensions. One, as we discussed, is creativity. Creativity, strategy, coming up with new ideas, conceptualizing, multi-domain, AI cannot do. The other one is that AI doesn't have compassion and love, and that AI does not have the human touch and the ability to win trust, and that there are many jobs that we want to interact with a human and refuse to interact with a robot. So those jobs arguably are much larger in number and can potentially help the people displaced from routine jobs to be trained into these jobs of human interaction. These are service jobs that include a human service component. So our graph is actually not accurate because this is just one dimension regarding creativity. There should be another dimension that relates to human interaction, service, compassion, empathy. Then we would put the jobs in these places, and we would find that actually there are many other jobs that are available. In America, there are many elderly caretaker jobs available. There can be 1 million such people hired if people applied for them. People don't apply for them because they are not paid well. So if we're going to make $17 trillion worldwide based on AI, if we just shift some of that to subsidize elderly care pay through whatever mechanism that is appropriate, that would create many jobs that people in these positions can be trained and shift into. And that same goes with elderly care, elderly companion, and nannies and nurses. These are all possibilities. If you think about elderly companion, we're all going to live to be older. Human longevity has been increasing, but people over 80 require 5 times as much care as those between 60 and 80. And the population of people over 80 will be increasing throughout. So in the next 20 years, there will be many more elderly companion and nurses needed. So this kind of training is possible, either through a government subsidy or through a company providing training for jobs that won't go away. Most of those jobs on the upper left will not go away. AI cannot displace them. So some training, whether it's provided by changing the mix of vocational training in high schools, or changing the mix of vocational schools, or companies voluntarily offering employee training, not for jobs outside the company. Amazon, for example, offers nursing classes to its warehouse employees, so that in 4 years, actually Amazon will subsidize $60,000 for the warehouse employees to go into elderly care and nursing, because I think Jeff Bezos is very aware that he will be replacing those jobs with robots in the 4 to 5 year time frame. And I think he has a sense of corporate responsibility. He wants employees to view Amazon positively, even though he'll be laying them off. He'll be finding them work right afterwards, just not in Amazon. And also, Amazon is a big beneficiary of AI, so naturally, such companies should have responsibility to care for its employees that it displaces. I think that sets a very good corporate example. Of course, governments may also choose to do different things. Schools will also be different. I think a lot of a teacher's tasks can be done by a machine. We funded companies that grade exams and grade homeworks, not only multiple choice questions, but also fill in the blank, chemical equations, mathematical proofs can all be graded by AI. They don't require a teacher anymore. So the teacher should spend more time becoming a mentor to the student. Just like a doctor should spend more time being a comforter and being a solicitor of questions, understand family history, and let AI do the analysis, but provide the wording and feedback that gives patients the confidence that they will recover and survive. So there can be a lot more teachers, there can be a lot more doctors, and there can be a lot more elderly caretakers. And if we take the teachers to an extreme, if it's a 3-to-1 ratio of students to teachers, the teacher is more a mentor, helping, guiding the students. Many of those jobs come up. Many of these people can be teachers, not necessarily elementary school teacher, but teach something that they love. Maybe it's music, maybe it's just being mentorship, maybe it's about EQ training. But all of those teachers, if we can have a 3-to-1 student-teacher ratio, then shouldn't we also encourage more people to do homeschooling? If you do homeschooling, augmented with some social activities, that arguably is the best way, because who is a better mentor than the parent who wants the child to grow to be the best he or she can be in this interesting time where there are no more routine jobs, but finding what your heart desires becomes more important. So I think the future of work is going to be at least not a simple answer of AI displaces work or AI helps us. There's actually 4 quadrants, where the lower quadrant, AI will take away the jobs. The lower right quadrant, AI becomes a tool to amplify our creativity. The upper left is AI doing the analysis with humans providing the warmth. Think of teachers and doctors as jobs in that category. And then lastly, we of course still control our fate in the areas that require both creativity as well as compassion. So AI is really more like electricity. So while I talked a lot about China versus US, China is catching up, in reality, China and US are in parallel universes, don't actually compete for the same customers. And also, AI is like electricity. Think of AI as having been invented by electricity, having been invented by Thomas Edison. The whole world can benefit from it. Actually, countries should share their best practices, how AI is applied to education, to healthcare, and to many other areas, and also how to deal with all the issues that have come up. Europe has come up with GDPR to deal with privacy issues, but how do we deal with security? How do we deal with joblessness? All these, I think, require very open-minded thinking, which AI community is. And from many countries, whether it's German and the Swiss who focus on craftsmanship, Canada and Netherlands that are good for voluntarism, the jobs of compassion that I talked about, and gifted education that Korea is very good for. I think a lot of sharing is needed for us to make progress. So I really don't hope that AI is not viewed as a zero-sum game, particularly not a Cold War between China and US. So in the last 45 minutes, I talked about the next 20 years, the opportunities and challenges that face us. But I want to conclude by saying if we go a little bit farther, 50 years from now, when all the students will still be around, hopefully you'll look back. Some of us may be around too, but the students will be around. 50 years, I think when you look back, you'll see that we've done our good job overcoming these issues. And rather than thinking of AI as a threat, I think people then will look back and really think about AI as electricity, as a very even more serendipitous than electricity, because it will liberate us from having to do routine jobs. And it will allow us to really think about what it is that we want to do, what makes us excited, what's our passion, and why it is that we are humans on this earth. And finally, I think AI is just a tool so that we control it. We are the ones who have free will, so we will be the ones that write the ending to the story of AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So now you all know what you need to work on for the next 50 years?
50 years,
50
yeah.
years? Okay. We have time for a few questions, and then we'll move on to the book signing. Here we go. For question number one from our own Ed Malthouse.
Thank you for a really good talk. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You talked a lot about the use of AI in creating better products and services, and I was also kind of relieved to see that marketing and PR directors the jobs are safe. So the question is, how do you see AI affecting the practice of marketing communications and or more broadly marketing? So what AI techniques are going to be most important for marketing professionals to learn and use?
Okay. For marketing, I think some of it is just AI just cannot do. When I put PR and marketing at the upper right, I'm thinking about the storytelling, the creation of the brand, and those require creative minds. That is not something that AI can do. What AI can do is, given you've decided on the brand, how to carry it out, right? So the campaign, how to do the measure, even how to design the graphics. I think there are increasing AI companies that can be tools that do that. So if you want to, I think what this will happen is it will really, like in most professions, separate the truly giants and the truly great from the rest. Because if you're just an average marketer, drawing pictures, designing things, doing EDMs and sending out emails and doing social campaigns, those jobs are going to be gone. I think you have to elevate to those who decide what the strategy is, what the creative branding is, and then let AI essentially do the work on a daily basis. I think metrics will become ever more important. I'm aware that Northwestern, your school, is among the first to look at the metric-based ways of doing marketing. That will become the only way in the future. Marketing and sales will be increasingly linked. And the metrics that are used, I think right now, you use metrics, give you insight to make your customer happy. But in the future, I think a lot of that will also be automated. So how to incorporate AI in the loop to ensure the maximization, because AI is so good, there will be technologies that you can give it the final objective metric, such as number of customer engagements, length of customer engagement, dollars spent per customer, number of products sold, and AI will do that, as we have seen, right? And I think it's also important for the students to think about what are the side effects when AI starts to do that job. For example, Facebook newsfeed, all the things we read recently negatively about Facebook, is a side effect of using an automated way, because it doesn't know about side effects. If you tell it your goal is to engage the customer, maximize the number of minutes that they spend on news feeds, then it will do whatever it takes to accomplish that goal. And in doing that, some of the things that are deep and important to us as humanity get lost. For example, making biased people more biased, presenting things that might not be good for the individuals. So I think in the future, there needs to be some kind of a combination on the principles that we hold dear that are combined with the metric-based approaches. So those kind of things were things that I wish when Facebook hired all these great researchers, they had put them on. but it's not too late. They can still work on it. In China, we have a company called Toutiao that has similar issues. But I really would like to think there should be ways for these objective functions to be combined with some more human guidance. We don't know what that is yet. So when people say, what is the next big thing in AI? I think adding that humanness on top of the deep learning in a way that still preserves the best of both worlds would be something that's worth working on.
Ed, I hope even on your grade curve, that was an A. Okay. Other questions?
We have a question here.
Great presentation, thank you. Real quick, I'd like to know something I haven't heard a lot about is the role of blockchain and quantum computing in AI. Then also, I'd just like to know, you're speaking at Uptake tomorrow. Would it be the same or a different presentation?
It would be the
Oh,
very
by the way, and you have a minute.
Okay, same presentation, so don't go. Blockchain has a lot of promise, but there are a couple of underlying problems. One is the massive amount of compute that it takes to deliver the goal of an unalterable contract. When and if that works, it can be integrated with AI with smart contracts. It can be used to validate the data to train AI. So there are natural places to combine them, but I view that as a fledgling new technology. Quantum computing is, again, not a proven thing. And if it works in a matter of 5 to 10 years, it can dramatically accelerate certain types of compute. Whether it accelerates AI or not, I think is yet unknown. And whether that will bring AI to a new level, causing us to go back in the era of discovery again, that's also unknown. So you mentioned two very important technologies that have some possibility of having a huge world-changing impact, but they're at an earlier stage than AI. AI is more proven. So, for example, in our investments, we've made very few blockchain and no quantum computing investments. You can usually tell by whether VC is investing money into it, whether this is something that will matter in 5 years. So I think it's still questionable, too early.
Thank you, Doctor. Ro?
Hey, thanks a lot for the great talk. So I was a product manager before Kellogg, and I'll continue to do the same after that. And there's a general sense in the domain that if the product that you're working on doesn't use AI or machine learning, then you're not a product manager. But at the same time, not everything is worth solving through an AI. So there's like always a balance that you have to maintain because of the cost involved and the impact that you're getting. So would you have any recommendations on, or like a framework which sort of works for, as a PM to figure out that, okay, I should look at AI for solving these kind of problems, these other kind of problems. Maybe some simpler methods are better, would work better for those cases.
Well, I think AI only works with data. So as a PM, does your product have a very good way to gather data instantaneously in real time? Without that, it's useless, right? And also, based on the amount of data you have, there are different types of AI to use. I talk a lot about deep learning. Deep learning actually is the hungriest for massive amounts of data. For most practical products, it's probably not possible to get enough data from the get-go to use deep learning. So a good product probably will go stepwise, using improving more complex algorithms as more data is gathered. So I think design your product so that it has multiple phases. For example, we invest in a company that does an app that allows you to get a loan instantaneously, a great app. But the moment you launch it, there's no data. So they came up with some rules about how to give the loan. Of course, the rules were no good, so they lost a lot of our money that we give to them. But they got some data. They used that data to train a simple classifier. Then that got the default rate down, and they lost more money because it wasn't low enough. Then eventually, they told good enough stories, raised enough money, and then they got to a break-even point. And that was the point they could massively scale the product, get huge amounts of data, and really deploy deep learning. So in this talk, I simplify. It sounds like there's a magic thing that works from day one. But actually, if you build a product that has no data from the get-go, you really have to go from rule-based to simple classifier and gradually to deep learning. And that should be built in as your product scales.
Doctor, I hate to do it, but we do need to move on because you need to sign all of their books.
Okay.
Now, however, we added a second show at the engineering building at 2 o'clock, Ryan Auditorium. Even better, he's shaking it down here. He's getting good. So, however, first, Doctor, we'd like to thank you, and Anita. This is Anita. Welcome home after 20 years. She started here 20 years ago this month.
Last year. Yeah, happy to be back. So thank you all for showing up, and really good to see you guys.
And
Thank you.
we have some gifts, of course. Now, Anita, they're purple.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks very much.
So thank you. Now,
Okay.
Doctor, is your wrist loosened up? Are
Already.
you ready to go?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Give us
Thank
2
you.
minutes. We've got books out in the lobby if you don't already have them. And gang, how are we doing this? Where are we lining up?
I did this as a freshman in my large class. I had to
Hi.
jump up to the front to
Oh, hi.
talk to the professor.
Hi.
Just a quick question. It seems
Yes.
to me that there's an enormous amount of opportunity in these